you want to give a brief introduction to yourself, it's probably better that you do it instead of me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I currently run a project called Unsupervised Learning, which aims to the adoption and understanding of locally run AI, so like offline ChatGPT and open source technology for end users and small to medium businesses, pretty much just everyone. And I go around and talk to people on my podcast and soon to be YouTube channel. I think that's it.
Cool. And
Yeah.
I just noticed that you started your Substack, and that's why I wanted to speak with you. I'm really impressed with the work you have done so far. Where do you think this is going? What are you trying to build?
Yeah, I was thinking about what am I trying to actually achieve, and I think I mentioned like I am tr I'm coming at it from a point of view of I'm not a very technical person. I don't have a bunch of prior knowledge and understanding. If you look through my LinkedIn, you'll see that like I've tried my hand at a bunch of different things, and that's when I came to realize that I just enjoy knowledge sharing, and it's not marketing, it's like uh ungated kind of no gatekeeping of things that can better everybody. And that leads me into thinking like what the use cases for things like local AI. So going back, I met the team at Jan and was working with them, and they had mentioned that to scale the adoption and understanding of like large language models that you can run on your own computer and open source tech as a whole, it's more than just one company. So that's my aim, is to talk to lots of different people from like healthcare to education and low resourcing. I didn't know what the word GPU meant. You can see it on a podcast. I'm like, what does that mean? And it's because people don't know the options are there. And so they're not doing them because they don't know that they exist. And I think that's what I'm kind of aiming to achieve. I did put out recently, and I have been talking to people about the idea of a documentary, which is like potentially a far future thing, but also maybe not. Um, Looking at, I'd like to kind of go from the full end-to-end life cycle of what it means to actually build an AI application, build your own LLM, taking a look at someone who's building their own, like an indie hacker, taking a look at a business and those the trade-offs that you have to make with going open source versus proprietary tech, things like climate change, but it's a not climate change, sorry, climate impact, but it's a whole bunch of directions I could go in for that, I guess.
And it's interesting that especially the open source part, I find quite interesting.
Mm,
There's been some debate on whether AI should be open source or closed source.
mm,
Nowadays, the AI that most regular people use is usually a closed source from the big companies like OpenAI, Meta, Google, and so on.
mm,
But there's also a movement for open source AI.
mm,
For example, with the French company Mistral AI,
mm,
and Llama, Meta's Llama, that's kind of it can be discussed how open source it really is. And it actually the same with many of the big, AI companies. Sometimes they claim that it's open source, while, as I understand, in fact, it's just open weights, but there's still a lot of closeness to it. And there's some concerns regarding open source also. For instance, OpenAI and some of the other big players, they claim that it can be dangerous to let everyone use AI, and it can
mm,
also, yeah, what else do they say? Yeah, that it should be centralized and controlled because that's the best way to control AI. And then there's another side of the coin, and that's the realm that you are operating in for open source. Do you have any opinions on why
yeah,
such an open source community is important?
I do. And again, I come at it from a point of view of like, I, uh, I don't want to step on the toes of people that have been working so hard and for so long in this industry. And I come along and have my own opinions, but my own opinions are based on, do you know Predibase? Base, I think they're a UK research company. They put out a 2023 report that was like, okay, why aren't businesses using AI? And I think it was, I'll send you the link so that you can have the right figures. But it was like the cautious approach was 13% of enterprises actively using LLMs in production. And the reasons weren't like, oh, because it hallucinates, because of costs. It was actually 33% was them giving up access to proprietary data and files, which leads you to think like, okay, we'll just have your own customization and system running locally on your computer. There's a really great person that I follow on LinkedIn whose last name I can't remember, but his first name is Mitko, and he talks about industrial AI. And the thing that I think people need to consider and be mindful of is like the open source models aren't there yet in terms of capability like ChatGPT 4, but it's the trade-off at the moment. And if it remains open, then it's like that accelerating innovation thing, right? It's like sharing your work. And I feel like I just feel like a lot more would get done if it was, or a lot more would happen in a positive way. And I like gut instinct tells me that like people that want to keep everything very closed and do a lot of fear mongering is because of commercial gain. But then again, I don't know. And I have a tendency to, it can be seen as like fence sitting or like a lack of conviction, but I think that it's like that, what is it, like strong opinions loosely held. Like
That's a good
I'm,
expression by Mark
I'm,
Andreessen.
yeah, yeah, like I'm very open to uh not to say I'm suggestible, but it's like I think there's a lot of philosophy and a lot of psychology that goes into open source as well. I felt myself making a really big shift in just the way that I think about myself, the world around me. You mentioned GDPR in your own work, and the way that I think about ownership and knowledge as a whole, like for like collective knowledge, I'm like, what does that mean? And it leads me, I mentioned to someone who had on the podcast, Michael Spencer, I was like, I feel like I navel gaze a lot. But then if it's helping, I guess it's okay. Um, yeah, I think I answered your question
Sure.
eventually.
Yeah, it's funny because my own background, at least my writing background, especially, I started writing about crypto and Bitcoin and decentralized finance and all that jazz. And then I kind of transitioned into AI because that's where the hype is and that's where everything is in the tech world right now. And it's
Mm,
funny that I can't help but see some parallels between crypto and AI, especially this closeness, openness. Like Bitcoin was one of the main reasons why Bitcoin was promoted was because it was transparent, it was open. We need open
mm,
finance, and all these arguments also applies to AI nowadays, I think. So these gigantic companies like Microsoft, Meta, Google, um, and when we consider how powerful AI technology potentially is, we don't know, but it could eventually turn out to become very powerful. And if these few players have all the power and all the control
mm,
over this, it could, it's a nightmare,
mm,
really. And once the dragon is out of the box, then then they have the control, and democracy will slowly be broke down. That's
mm,
what I'm concerned about with these gigantic closed companies. So I'm all
mm.
for open source, and as you say, it's a whole philosophy. It's not just like a technical thing; it's a philosophical thing as well. Do you have any concerns about AI? I have many concerns, as you can hear. I'm afraid
Yeah.
about many things.
I think that mine kind of mirror yours in a way. The way that prior to being exposed to Jan, I think I did try and teach myself, is it Ubuntu? I'm going to butcher the name. Linux, like it's a running on Linux, and also Kali by Linux. And if if you see me, like I can barely open VS Code. Like I'm trying, but it was that. And then also I remember reading an article about owning your data, and just the idea that everything I have is on Google Cloud, and then Google Cloud started charging me, and I just pay the extra because it's like, oh, you've got 5 GB that you need to, and I'm like, okay, I'll pay you $2.99 for some reason. But just the idea that like everything, every photo I've taken since what, 2006 or something is on Google. And if that goes away, which it can at any time, I'm kind of without. And I felt stupid. And I was like, oh, it's that trust. And I don't want to like walk around with a tinfoil hat or anything and be like, oh, but it's not about that. It's like, no, it's a legitimate concern because there's lots of businesses that have gone, they don't exist anymore, right? And uh, defensible moats, I don't know that they are as existent as people think that they are. So especially with AI at the moment. But that was a thing that's something that concerns me, is how much control these technologies have over me in terms of like the way that I'm actually living my life and where I'm storing my data and what I'm doing. And an alternative is what I think needs to be even offered or just spoken about a bit more. But it's at the moment, I think, like you said, with the like AI is the new crypto, like it might be kind of tarred with a brush of like, oh, it's AI, it's hype. And so people just kind of push it away and they think that it's not relevant or important to them. And that's, yeah. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
my concern, I think.
100% agree.
Yeah.
That's why to bring in another topic, that I think the social media landscape is so damaging when it comes to this, because there's so much clickbait and so much
Yeah.
fake news. And ironically enough, AI is going to power that even more. So getting accurate information about things are hard nowadays, and it's only going to get harder. But hopefully, it will change over time. And without getting too pessimistic and seeing all the dark sides of AI, what are you most excited about?
Yeah. Most excited about, and this is something I spoke about, I feel like yesterday morning, and I didn't realize how excited I got until I was still, when you tell someone else and then you tell someone else and you're like, oh, I just can't shut up about it. It was the idea of home automation. And like, I have wanted to be in the Jetsons since I was like a child, right? And the idea of like I guess it's AI agents, because it's just process, like almost just process automation. But if you're calling out to, if those agents are making decisions on their own, I don't know the term for it because again, not from that world, but if the go ahead is there and it's like, yeah, can I access this without asking, like say it wants to turn on my smart light at whatever time, that excites me. Um, on a more serious note, like AI in healthcare, I interviewed someone recently who was a part of detecting Parkinson's in low resourcing areas via voice and using AI. I think it was Google. It was a Google project. It was like a part of Elite Code something. I need to again send you the link for citing, but those two areas, like healthcare and actual like embedded AI in hardware, are really exciting to me, despite not having any experience with it. But yeah, what about you?
I'm excited and I'm concerned about AI in the legal industry, for one thing. That's
Oh,
something I've read quite a lot about recently. And there's no doubt that AI will make work easier for many lawyers. And it will also, I'm not going to say it will threaten their jobs, but it will be a bit tricky. Um, it's a bit scary, and it's also a huge opportunity for the legal industry. And many of the big law firms have no choice but to embrace legal solutions. For instance, for contract reviews, there was recently a paper from New Zealand where they found that GPT-4 and other Claude 2 and other of those, big large language models, they could perform with almost the same level of accuracy as junior lawyers and as not senior lawyers, but at least what was it? Lawyers outsourced from the company. So they could perform at the same level of accuracy pretty much, and of course much faster. Like it takes maybe a junior lawyer 20 hours, not 20 hours, let's say 2 hours to read through a contract, whereas it takes a GPT-4 10 seconds or something like that. And also cost-wise, it makes no sense if you look at it strictly like that to let humans do contract reviewing. But then on the other side, it's still very dangerous to lean too much up against these the opinions of these AI tools, because they have no understanding of the world, they have no understanding of reality, and that's a huge problem. And especially in the legal industry, even small mistakes can be very costly. So it's something that lawyers need to be very careful about. And I'm excited about AI in so many respects. It seems a bit superficial to say maybe that I'm excited about AI and research, because excitement is not even the right word, but it's going to help a lot with diseases and with cancer and all that. Personally, the thing I'm most excited about is the way that AI is going to change and impact society. That's like my thing. That's the thing I write about. The whole philosophical set of questions that AI raise about how we do things. And that's kind of the same with Bitcoin. That's the thing with these very disruptive and new technologies. It forces society to rethink how we do things. And that's very exciting. So let's see. My major concern is that there's, I have to choose my word carefully, because of course AI is not a bubble. The technology is going to last, but I'm a bit concerned with all the hype, and I worry that we'll maybe go into another AI winter over the next couple of years, and people will be turned off by AI. Many people are turned off by crypto and Bitcoin, to some degree, myself included, because of all the greed and all the terrible things that has happened in the industry. So I hope that something similar will not happen to AI. I hope that the hype can be kept at a reasonable level, and that there are many good use cases, and there's a lot of focus on how to overcome all the terrible applications that AI also have. So that's how I view it. And
Sorry, I think it was a TikTok actually that I saw of someone who was mentioning that, because this is the thing that comes up for me a lot, is how do you filter out all of the noise, and how do you focus on what's important? And I feel like it's one of those, and I say feel a lot instead of think or know, because I do a lot of feeling, and I feel as though it's another, like, almost philosophical thing where there are people that say, oh, just turn it off, just decide on what channels you're going to focus on, who you're going to listen to, what voices. But I think that doing that requires quite a strong confidence in yourself, and also like a conviction of knowing what you believe in and what you. So it can be difficult, especially for younger people. I see like a lot of young people on Reddit like constantly, or they feel like they have to be on like 24/7, and that's how I feel a lot of the time. But I think there is something to that, like it's very easy to say like, oh, people that they're just sticks in the mud and they're being pig-headed and they're not wanting to listen to anyone else. And it's like, is that true? Or are they just, they know what their lane is and they know what they're about and they're sticking with it? But I'm speaking about, I guess I'm speaking about people on like LinkedIn and loud voices is what I'm saying. And just because they're loud voices doesn't mean they're not accurate voices, but that's something that concerns me about AI in development is that, have you heard of HIPAA, like highest paid person's opinion? And it's
Oh,
generally
not
in
yet.
corporate, generally in corporate where it's like highest paid person's opinion matters most. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, the CEO is going to get the last because they matter most. That worries me, tying back to what you said about like the open AIs of the world, because they've got, you know, a shit ton of money to throw around. It's like they are the beacon that people look to. And that is something that I think about. About equality and all of those feelings and things that people don't want to talk about. Yeah.
The main problem with social media, there's a great quote by a historian called Yuval Noah Harari. And he says that the major problem with the world is that everybody is so excited. And why are everyone so excited? It's because of all this dopamine, all these dopamine hits we constantly get from being online. And it's interesting because some organisms, if they get too excited, they would actually die.
Mm.
So it's not natural for humans to be in a state of constant excitement and adrenaline rush. And
Mm.
I feel it myself. Like if sometimes I just compulsively check my phone.
Mm.
I don't know why. Like suddenly I'm on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, and I don't even know why. It's like these
Mm.
instincts are so strong. So maybe what we need are actually more boring social media. And that's also kind of what I'm uh, like what I do is maybe not that exciting. You know, I write long articles about heavy stuff,
Mm.
so it's not exciting, but I think it's important. I try to provide a kind of deeper understanding of some important subjects. And that's the kind of mindset I also try to embrace to try to read the long articles and dig deeper than
Mm.
just the hype, because that's a problem with social media, right? You don't need any merit, about what you talk. You can say basically
Yeah.
anything and anytime to anyone, and I don't think that we're really wired for that kind of freedom.
Mm. No, I completely agree and I understand. And it's like there was a project that I was trying to do for myself to understand Python and LangChain tools. And I was like, okay, what I'm going to do is I am going to follow a woman that I saw on YouTube, and she passed through a bunch of like Reddit threads and archive research papers and whatever she thought was relevant by keywords. And then it sent them to her in like a once-off newsletter just to her. And I was like, this is going to be great. It's just going to be the highlights. And then I did it and I was like, just because I can doesn't mean I should. Why am I doing this? Because I get some of those newsletters, or I used to, I've unsubscribed now, and it was just like the links. And it was like, here's what's happening today. And I'm like, I don't think I need this every day. Um, if something happens, I'll learn about it somehow. Like I might need to just do a willful ignorance, perhaps. But I feel like there is that side to AI communities where it's like if you talk about this kind of thing, you're being seen as a doomer. And I think that I have a tendency to be quite, do you know Chicken Little?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like the
I
sky
think
is
so.
falling. I have a tendency to be like that. Like I have a tendency to look at, oh, what could go wrong? And I used to get in trouble for it. Like, oh, come on, Renee, just be happy. I'm like, I am, but like, what's going to go wrong? And I think that it's important, but then also I, yeah, I don't really know how to finish that sentence. I think it's just balance and like, yeah.
In my line of business, it's great to be like that, to be like Chicken Little and be paranoid. You have to be aware of all the dangers. I suppose it's
Yeah.
also a matter of like distancing yourself from it a bit. So kind of like mindfulness meditation kind of mindset where you can recognize that you are worried about some stuff, but you also be able to kind of turn it off and focus on something else. And that goes for so many things, that this ability to like control one's own thoughts and mind, that's so important, especially nowadays where like everyone is just screaming for your attention and wants you to buy stuff and all that. That's also another thing I noticed about your Substack, that you only publish one time a week. For me, that makes a lot of sense. I do the same thing because I cannot handle newsletters that send me mails every day. I have so much to read and so much to do, so it's just too much. And some of those people have some really great insights and some great news, but it's just too much for me to handle. So I select newsletters after how many times a week they communicate with me, and that's not based on quality. That's not based on respect for my own time. So that's one thing. So yeah, I'm really happy that I got the chance to talk with you here, and I'm impressed about what you're doing with the open source community. I think it looks very promising, and I'll look forward to following your work. Do you have any closing words for today?
Uh, I should have prepared for this. No, not really.
Sorry
This has been
to
wonderful.
sorry to put you on the spot.
No, you're fine. No, this has been wonderful. I really enjoy talking about the deeper stuff. I mentioned to someone earlier today that I find it very hard to be surface level. I find small talk excessively difficult. So I'm always like, tell me about your childhood. Uh, but no, I'm on Substack and LinkedIn, and I am always online and trying not to be. I'm going to get a hobby. No.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you so much, Tobias.
Yeah, it was great talking with you.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.